the best gift you could give me, Dad. Just disappear." That's what my son said, on his birthday, while laughing with his friends in the house I paid for. I was standing outside with a warm peach cobbler in one hand and the pocket watch his grandfather left him in the other. I'd driven 2 hours to surprise him. I hadn't even knocked on the door yet, but I heard every word. He's always hovering, always judging. I just wish he'd vanish already. They laughed like it was nothing, like I was nothing. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I turned around, walked back to my truck, and left. No goodbye, no drama. Just one quiet thought. If he really wants me gone, he'd better be ready for what that looks like. Because the deed to that house? Still in my name, and I was done being disrespected under my own roof. I wasn't always this quiet. In my younger years, I used to speak up. I'd lecture, advise, offer lessons. I thought that's what fathers were supposed to do, especially after Lorraine passed and it was just me and Caleb. He was 9 when she died. Leukemia. Quick and cruel. I remember sitting at the edge of his bed that first night, watching him pretend to sleep while I tried to figure out how I was supposed to fill both roles. I cooked every meal. I braided his hair for picture day when he insisted he didn't want it messed up. I stitched the seams of his Halloween costumes. I sat through every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every scraped knee and science project. I never remarried. Thought about it once or twice, but I didn't want Caleb to feel like I was replacing his mother. So I filled my days with work, teaching math at the local high school, and my nights with grading papers, folding laundry, and trying to keep the house from feeling empty. When he got into college, I cried harder than I'd cried at his high school graduation. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud. And maybe, if I'm honest, a little relieved that all those years of doing it alone hadn't been wasted. I helped with tuition. Not all of it. He had scholarships, but I sent what I could. I remember him calling once just to say, "Thanks for the check, Dad." It wasn't much, but it meant something. Then, after graduation, the calls slowed. The visits dropped. He got married young. Too young, I thought, but I kept that opinion to myself. His wife, Jenna, was pleasant enough, if a bit aloof. I tried to stay in my lane, bought them a blender for the wedding, sent holiday cards, dropped off groceries once when I heard they were struggling. Then came the pandemic. They lost work, had to downsize. I told them, "Move into the old place. I'll stay at my brother's for a while." They said yes. Grateful, at first. Jenna hugged me in the driveway. Caleb even helped repaint the living room. For a while, it felt close again. Then I came back, just for a visit, a long weekend. But something had shifted. There were new rules. "Can you knock next time, Dad? Maybe don't rearrange the spice rack. Jenna likes it a certain way. Could you not bring over so many leftovers? The fridge is kind of full." Each comment was small, almost reasonable, but together they formed a pattern. One I'd ignored until I heard those words through the window on his birthday. I just wish he'd disappear. Not back off. Not give us space. Disappear. And the worst part? He said it like a joke, like something he'd been thinking for a long time, finally brave enough to say with an audience that would laugh instead of question. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't family anymore. I was a guest who'd overstayed his welcome, a walking obligation, a leftover, an aging inconvenience who kept showing up with casseroles and advice. That realization didn't come with tears. It came with stillness, with silence, and with the quiet formation of a thought I'd never considered before. Maybe it's time to stop knocking on a door that only opens out of guilt. That night, I didn't call Caleb. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even finish the cobbler. I just sat at my kitchen table, alone, and stared at the deed to the house they'd been living in. He thought it was his. They both did. But I never signed it over. And maybe that was the only thing I'd done right in a long, long time. It was a Tuesday evening in April, too warm for the jacket I'd worn, but I kept it on anyway. Caleb was turning 35, and I'd been invited, technically. The text had come from Jenna 3 days earlier. "Hey, Walter, we're doing a little BBQ for Caleb's birthday. Feel free to stop by around 6. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. That stung more than it should have. I spent the morning making his favorite, peach cobbler, the same recipe Lorraine used to bake every birthday since he was 7. I'd even pulled out my father's pocket watch, the one Caleb used to stare at as a boy, fascinated by the ticking. I'd had it cleaned and wrapped in velvet, tucked inside a small wooden box. He'd mentioned it once, offhandedly, years ago, saying, "I always loved how solid it felt in your hand, Dad, like time had weight." I figured 35 was the right moment to pass it down. A generational gift for a man becoming, hopefully, a better one. The moment I pulled into the driveway, I could see the party in full swing. String lights across the backyard. Music. Laughter. Burgers on the grill. Caleb, beer in hand, standing with his friends around the fire pit. I parked across the street, carefully balanced the cobbler and gift box in my arms, and walked toward the side gate. That's when I heard it. Man, if I get through tonight without a lecture from the old man, I'll call it a win. "He's coming?" one of his buddies asked. Caleb snorted. "Yeah, probably with some weird homemade dessert and a story from 1975. Laughter. "Honestly?" Caleb continued. "If he just disappeared one day, I think I'd sleep better." "Dude," someone else chimed in, chuckling. "You're brutal." "Nah," Caleb said. "I'm tired of walking on eggshells around his feelings. He acts like helping with bills means he gets to run our life. He's not Dad anymore. He's a landlord with emotions." That one cut deeper than the rest. Not Dad, not even Walter. Just a landlord with emotions. I stood there behind the fence, the box and cobbler suddenly heavier than I could carry. I set them gently on the grass beside me and sat down on the small stone retaining wall near the flower bed. My legs couldn't seem to hold me anymore. The party kept rolling. Caleb laughed again. Someone popped a bottle. Jenna walked past the sliding door, holding a tray of skewers. None of them knew I was 10 feet away. And that was when I realized I didn't belong anymore. Not in that house, not in that yard, not in the version of family they were performing. I stayed there another 10 minutes, not because I hoped the words would change, but because I needed to feel all of it, raw and unfiltered. I needed to let the sting do its work. Then, slowly, I picked up the cobbler and the gift. Walked back to my truck, sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might keep me from unraveling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared ahead, watching the lights flicker in the backyard like a celebration I was never meant to be part of. It was in that silence that something in me finally shifted. For years, I'd swallowed little cuts, tolerated eye rolls, overlooked sharp words and short replies. But this was clarity. Clarity hurts, but it's honest. And honest things have weight, just like that old pocket watch Caleb would never receive. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, cobbler untouched, the watch box unopened. I looked at the deed to the house. at the file folder where every bill, every receipt, every record from the past 10 years was neatly kept. He didn't know it, but I'd never signed the house over. He'd been living there, rent-free, for 6 years. I'd paid the property tax, the roof repairs, the air conditioner last summer. I even covered the internet bill. Why? Because I thought that's what fathers did. But fathers aren't required to fund their own erasure. By sunrise, the plan had formed. Not revenge, not spite, just closure. If Caleb truly wanted a life without me, I would honor that wish. And I would start by removing the floor beneath his feet, the one I'd built and paid for, brick by brick. By mid-morning, I had pulled out every document I owned: property tax receipts, the original mortgage, long paid off, utility bills, insurance paperwork, and an old will I hadn't looked at since Caleb got married. I made black coffee and turned off my phone. The kitchen table became a war room, not for battle, but for boundaries. For years, I'd operated from a place of hope. Hope that Caleb would come around, that maturity would smooth the edges, that gratitude would eventually bloom. But hope, as it turns out, is a costly investment, and mine had stopped yielding returns, so I moved to something more reliable: logic. I created a spreadsheet, old habit from my teaching days. Column A, monthly costs to maintain the house. Property taxes, $30,400 per year. Utilities, $320 per month on average. Repairs and maintenance, around $7,000 annually. That roof didn't fix itself. Total, roughly $36,000 a year to keep a grown man and his wife in comfort. All of it coming from my retirement fund. I stared at the numbers for a long time. Then I opened a second tab. Real estate listings. Houses in our neighborhood were going fast. Low inventory, high demand. A 3-bedroom with a decent yard, not unlike mine, had just gone under contract for $865,000. That's when I picked up the phone and called Linda Bell, a former student of mine who now ran her own real estate agency. "Mr. Harris? I haven't heard your voice in years." "Hi, Linda. I'm thinking of selling the house. Quietly. Quickly." A pause. Then, professional mode. "We can make that happen." We scheduled a walkthrough for Thursday morning. She'd bring a photographer. I'd sign paperwork. She'd start pre-listing it with her network immediately. That gave me 3 days. 3 days to prepare the legal side. 3 days to emotionally accept what I was doing. 3 days to become the kind of man who no longer confused giving with loving. That evening, I wrote a letter. Not to Caleb, to myself. He doesn't hate you. He just never learned to love what didn't serve him. And you kept serving, long past the point of self-respect. Now, it's time to stop. I folded the page and tucked it into my desk drawer. I don't know why. Maybe as proof that I wasn't being cruel, just clear. The next day, I visited my lawyer, Ted Klein. We'd been fishing buddies before his knees gave out. He raised an eyebrow when I told him what I needed. A formal notice to terminate Caleb and Jenna's occupancy. 30 days to vacate. Legal. Clean. Unambiguous. "Walter," he said, setting down his coffee, "you sure you want to go this route? I'm not evicting my son out of anger. I'm removing myself from a dynamic that's been broken for years." He nodded. Didn't press. Good man, Ted. We drafted the notice together, making sure every word was airtight. I would deliver it myself. No surprise ambush. I owed Caleb that much. That night, I didn't sleep again. Not from guilt, but from restlessness. I walked the house, room by room, touched the places Caleb used to play, used to nap, used to live like love was endless and effortless. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at a man I hadn't seen in years. Not a father, Not a wallet, not a doormat, just Walter. Human. Flawed. Still standing. By Thursday morning, the house was staged. Linda arrived with her camera crew, cheerful and efficient. "This place shows beautifully," she said, clicking away. "You kept it in excellent shape." "I tried," I said. "For a long time, I tried." She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't have to. By that afternoon, I'd signed the listing agreement. Full price. No contingencies. If her pre-listing strategy worked, we'd have offers by Monday. That night, I placed the notice of termination inside a plain envelope. I slipped it under Caleb and Jenna's front door. No confrontation, no explanation. Just quiet clarity. They would read it in the morning. I would be gone by the evening. Not to run away, but to reclaim the space I'd given up one sacrifice at a time. They showed up the next morning, Caleb and Jenna, just before 9 a.m. I'd been staying at a quiet motel off Route 12, the kind with scratchy towels and black and white TVs. Still, it gave me something I hadn't had in years. Space. My phone rang at 9:04. I let it buzz. At 9:17, I heard the knock on the motel door. I opened it slowly. Caleb stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt, eyebrows pulled tight. Jenna hovered behind him, arms folded. "What the hell is this?" he said, holding up the eviction notice. I stepped aside and gestured to the small table by the window. "Come in, son. Let's talk like adults." He walked in like a storm cloud, fast, heavy, unpredictable. "You blindsided us, Dad. We have kids, a life. You don't just kick your family out of their home." "It's not your home," I said quietly. "It never was." That stopped him for a second. Jenna sat down, stiff and silent. I placed a manila folder on the table and slid it toward him. Inside, copies of every bill I'd paid over the last 6 years. Taxes, utilities, roof repair, the furnace replacement, groceries I'd dropped off, the Christmas bonus I'd slipped under their doormat when Caleb lost his job. "I've carried this house for you longer than I should have," I said, and I did it with love. But somewhere along the way, love turned into obligation, then into resentment. He didn't open the folder. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. "So you're punishing us?" Jenna asked, her voice sharp. "No," I replied. "I'm removing myself from a dynamic that's been broken for a long time." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Because of what I said? That was a joke. Just venting. I didn't mean it. You said I should disappear. I didn't think you were listening." "That's the problem," I said. "You stopped thinking I mattered at all." For a moment, the motel room filled with silence, the kind that isn't empty, just full of everything left unsaid for too long. Then he scoffed. "So this is your revenge?" "No, Caleb. This is my peace." He looked at me like I was speaking a different language, like he couldn't comprehend a version of his father who didn't bend and stay quiet. "You'll regret this," he said, standing up. "I swear, one day—" "Maybe," I interrupted, "but not today." He opened the door, then stopped. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I finally stopped changing for you." He left without another word. Jenna followed, glancing back once, not with anger, but something closer to confusion, or maybe understanding. When the door clicked shut, I sat back down at the table and exhaled. Not in triumph. Just release. That was the moment I realized something. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes silence speaks loud enough. The motel room felt larger once they left. Not because it was spacious, it wasn't, but because something in me had exhaled for the first time in years. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I just sat there at the table with the morning sun spilling through the dusty blinds, letting the silence stretch. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but it was the absence of chaos, and that, for now, was enough. The next day, Linda called. "You won't believe this, Mr. Harris. We've got a full-price cash offer. They want to close within the week." "Take it," I said. "Let them build something new." She laughed softly, sensing I wasn't just talking about the buyers. That evening, I drove past the house one last time, not to go in, just to look. The porch light was on. The new owners, a young couple, mid-30s maybe, were unloading moving boxes from a U-Haul. The woman pointed excitedly toward the backyard. A little boy ran across the lawn. I watched from the far end of the cul-de-sac, headlights off, engine idling. No one saw me. Good. It was their home now, not Caleb's, not mine, just someone else's beginning. There was something healing in that, in knowing the space would be filled with birthday balloons and burnt casseroles and bedtime stories that actually got listened to. It deserved to be loved again. As for Caleb, I don't know where they went. I assume they found a short-term rental, or maybe moved in with Jenna's parents. I didn't ask. I didn't reach out. And they didn't either. That part stung more than I expected. You'd think, after everything, a phone call might come, even out of anger, even just to ask why. But nothing. Just quiet. And the funny thing is, that silence used to terrify me. When Lorraine died, the quiet in the house nearly broke me. Now, I welcomed it, not because I was stronger, but because I finally understood something. Being alone is hard. But being surrounded by people who make you feel invisible, that's worse. I spent the next few days packing what little I needed. The rest I donated or left behind. I found a one-bedroom rental near the lake. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I bought a used canoe, started fishing again, joined a local reading group at the library. I sleep better now. Not longer, just better, because I'm no longer waiting to be appreciated. Some mornings, I still think about that cobbler, how I carried it with such care, how it never made it to the table. But then I remind myself, not everything we make with love will be received with love. And that doesn't make the act of making it any less beautiful. They say you spend the first half of your life building a home, and the second half learning how to let it go. I never thought that would mean letting go of the people inside it. But here I am, 68 years old, sleeping in a small rental with mismatched curtains and creaky floors, and somehow breathing easier than I ever did in that big house full of silence. Caleb hasn't called. I'm not sure if he will, and if he does, I won't answer out of bitterness. I just don't have the energy to be anyone's lesson anymore. I gave my life in pieces, one bedtime story at a time, one forgotten dinner, one quiet yes when I should have said not this time. And I don't regret the giving. But I've learned that giving without limits doesn't make you generous. It makes you invisible. There's a kind of dignity in stepping away before you're pushed, a kind of peace in knowing you were never the villain, just the easy target. And there's a strange freedom in starting over when no one is watching. These days, I walk by the lake with my thermos of coffee. I talk to strangers. I read more slowly. I say no when I mean no. I no longer wait for Father's Day calls that don't come. I no longer replay conversations in my head, wondering what I could have said better. I've made peace with the echo, with being alone in a way that feels like finally coming home. If Caleb ever wonders why I left, why I didn't fight back, or shout, or slam doors, I hope he realizes this. Some exits aren't about running away. They're about walking toward something softer, something kinder. Myself? Because after all these years, after all that giving, I deserve to come home to someone who respects me, even if that someone is me.